Hello, protocols, packets, and programs. This is the last time we'll be live for 2025. Thanks to Tom and Tyson for making things easy. Thanks to Stam, Renee, and Maddie for making things possible. Thanks to John and Kalyani for making things fun. And thanks to every security researcher, developer, and journalist for making things interesting. And thanks to CVEs for nothing. Which means this week we talked with Cosgrove about the complexities in securing and maintaining open source software, joining SIGs, and encouraging a new generation of developers. Secure your defaults and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. Generative AI is powerful, but it comes with real risks, from prompt injection to data leakage misuse and agentic AI. The OWASP Gen AI Security Project unites a global community of expert practitioners who tackle these challenges every day. Together, they've built practical playbooks, adoption guides, and the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs, resources any team can apply right now to strengthen AI security. And it doesn't stop there. This is open source, built by practitioners, for practitioners, working together to secure generative AI. Visit securityweekly.com/OWASP to use the playbooks and join the effort to protect tomorrow's intelligence today. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER.
This is episode 361, recorded December 15th, 2021, or once again from the future where I am in New Zealand. Hello, John. Looking to you for a Monday. How are things going?
Are you looking to me in the past? Is that what you think of me? I'm just always, another year has gone by.
It is indeed another year has gone by, but we're going to end the year on a fun note because we have Kat, who is the head of developer advocacy at Minimus. She's focused on growing and nurturing open source through authentic contribution. Her specialties range from approachable intros to deep dives on the history of technology with a focus on DevOps and cloud native. She's been a Kubernetes release lead and currently serves as the release team sub-project owner and SIG Docs tech lead. Hello, Kat. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning. It's very early for you, I think.
Very early, 5:45 a.m. or 6 a.m. a little bit by now. We've been chatting for a bit. But this is about you, Kat, and we want to hear all kinds of things about Kubernetes. And already I was throwing around team and sub-team and sub-project and SIGs.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get us started off a little bit. I've also heard tags as well.
Mm-hmm.
The WC3 has tags. Before we get into the broader aspects of these things, let's define our terms. What does it mean to be a SIG? What is a SIG in the first place?
Sure. First of all, totally recognize that the way Kubernetes is organized can be a little bit difficult to grasp for people who are not actively involved in a whole bunch of open source projects. So sorry that it's complicated. But a SIG is a special interest group. And you do see SIGs, working groups, and tags in other projects. But Kubernetes mostly uses SIGs and working groups. And there are 38, I think, currently SIGs that make up the Kubernetes project. And they fall into different categories. We have horizontal SIGs that are responsible for like multiple functional aspects of the project. So things like SIG docs and SIG security exist across the project. Then we have vertical SIGs that own like a specific, very narrowly focused functional aspect of Kubernetes. Both horizontal and vertical SIGs can own code, but vertical SIGs virtually always do. So that would be like SIG networking or whatever, SIG storage, SIG auth. Those are all vertical SIGs that own like functional technical aspects of the project versus docs or security or release, which all of the vertical SIGs have to deal with. So I'm a technical lead for SIG docs. I am the sub-project owner for the release team. So SIGs have sub-projects that are a little bit more narrowly focused. SIG release has two, release engineering and the release team. I'm also a brand newly elected member of the Kubernetes steering committee, which isn't a SIG, but kind of sits above all of the SIGs and working groups to like drive the complete direction of the project. It's a little much, but we're the second largest open source project in the world behind Linux. So if we don't function organizationally a little bit more similar to an actual company, it's really hard to get anything done. You end up with a too many cooks in the kitchen situation.
No,
speaking of some of those cooks, I'm going to throw up a slight curveball that is people often ask, which is, you're on the steering committee and you don't work at Google?
I don't. So the deal with the steering committee is we actually don't allow more than 2 representatives from any one company on the steering committee. Steering committee is made up of 7 people serving 2-year terms, alternating 2-year terms. So 3 or 4 people go up for election every year. But yeah, we have a concept called maximal representation. So you can only have like 2 Googlers or 2 Red Hatters on the steering committee at any given time. Though, in my opinion, working for a big company does give you an advantage because coworkers that are also contributors are kind of just going to vote for people who they see work at the same company as them. And I work for a teeny tiny startup. So pretty proud of winning that election. But yeah, we don't allow for Google to take over the project.
And that's a really good question because it digs into a little bit to that, as you were mentioning too, Kat, about there are politics, for lack of a better term, in open source. You're running it as a business. But what's astonishing too is you rattled off a long list of SIGs, projects, sub-projects, describing the security steering committee. We'll come back to that in a second. But there's also just a lack of support in some cases. What is the Ingress Nginx that we should talk about briefly? Only 2 developers, even though this is the second largest open source project behind Linux. That's astonishing in not good ways. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, that's not great. So Ingress Nginx it currently still exists. But the current plan is we wind it down at the next KubeCon Europe in March. It's a Kubernetes sub-project. And it was maintained by only 2 people in spite of literal years of those 2 maintainers begging in public for help. Like we're a part of a foundation, right? Like the Kubernetes is a part of the CNCF, but it's not the CNCF's job to hand us maintainers. It's their job to provide us resources that sometimes occasionally can be hiring an engineer for like short contracts, but mostly it's things like handling infrastructure, handling a bunch of legal stuff. It's not hiring people to maintain these projects for money. So to me personally, the fault for Ingress Nginx needing to be wound down due to lack of maintainers is entirely, or at least mostly, on companies that rely on Ingress Nginx to build or distribute products that they make money off of, not giving back to the thing that they are relying on for their profit margins. And that's not a problem that's even unique to Ingress Nginx. This happens all the time in open source. It's painful and apparent with this one because it's a part of the Kubernetes project. It's a massive project, but also because like 30+% of cloud native environments rely on Ingress Nginx because it's what we suggest in our documentation. It's what we tell you to use, right? And years of begging, none of these people that relied on it thought, hey, maybe we should give back. They may have rationalized it with, well, we're CNCF members, we give money to the CNCF, surely they'll handle this. But that's not the case. And in fact, in a lot of situations, even just giving money directly to the maintainers, like through sponsorship, is not enough. Sometimes we don't need money. That money gets used to cover like infrastructure or whatever, but it's often not enough to hire full-time maintainers. What we need is bodies a lot of the time. Like we need you don't even have to hire like full-time engineering teams to donate time back to open source. It's great if you can. Big cloud vendors do that. But you don't have to. You can, however, I don't know, have your engineering team spend like a couple hours a week on something like that. That can be more valuable to us than money. And it was obvious and painful and very public with Ingress Nginx, but it also happened with External Secrets Operator, which is a CNCF project, but not part of Kubernetes. It's a sandbox project. And they publicly, their word, not mine, had to blackmail their users by threatening to stop releases because they don't have enough people. They don't have the staff, the time, the maintainers, the contributors to handle things like PR reviews and building and publishing releases. And that's wild to me when you've got like enormous multinational corporations actively profiting off of all of this free work. Like you're telling me with your like multi-billion dollars in profit, you can't like throw a couple of engineers at it? Come on.
It's amazing. We've talked with Simon Bennett of the Zetattack proxy, and he went through a couple different approaches and attempts at financing before he did finally land in something which seems good, an investment back from the community, a business community, I should say, that's using it. And we've even seen, what was it in last year? XZUtils. That was an example of here is an under supported project, and someone comes in bad faith saying, oh, so look at all these people sending you bug reports. Let me help you with the bug reports behind the scenes that I'm the one sending. So I wanted to tie that in just for like that. We got to set supply chain. It's the end of the year. We got to get all of our bingo cards going. Sure. But there's an aspect here too, Kat, in the sense of, as you said, it's in the documentation. How do you now suddenly have support teams, guide teams, where it's going to be now they're on legacy systems next year, and all of their AppSec folks are just going to come and say, this is old, or our scanner says this is old or unsupported. It's end of life. You got to upgrade, et cetera, et cetera. That's not a great feeling, and there's got to be some security thinking. How do you approach that, either from the steering committee approach or something else?
So, unfortunately, steering has no control over this one. So we knew about it in advance, obviously. We knew this was going to happen. So there was some negotiation between like steering and SRC, the Security Response Committee, for like how to handle this wind down, because it is obviously eventually going to be a security problem. With Ingress Nginx in particular, there's not a direct migration path to our suggested replacement, which is Gateway API. So there is work that has to be done to migrate off of Ingress Nginx. And we know, because humans are humans, that a not insignificant number of people are going to sit on old clusters and old versions so that they can keep using Ingress Nginx. And that is going to become an enormous security problem. I don't think it will be one immediately, right? Like we wind down Ingress Nginx in March-ish, and people aren't going to like immediately start popping clusters. But several months later, especially once we get out of like the support period for that version of Kubernetes, that I think we're going to see that become a serious issue. And again, totally not unique to Ingress Nginx. This happens every time there's like any degree of friction on an upgrade or a replacement. You're going to see people stick with that old version to avoid the friction, and their clusters are going to get popped. I wish people would learn from like watching this happen over and over again, but I don't know, human psychology says they don't, and they think that it won't happen to them. So,
well, it's a good thing that, Kubernetes is a pretty simple system, so it'll be pretty easy.
Oh, yeah, it'll be easy. You don't even need to like hire an expert for that who's going to cost your company probably multiple six figures a year. It's,
no problem.
My 5-year-old nephew.
Well, humans are humans, but yeah, I'm now Depeche Mode stuck in my head. Sorry, deep cut there. But how come speaking of bingo cards, LLMs can't just be a maintainer? LLMs can't fix this problem? Come on, Kat,
No.
what's the story here?
They cannot. So the Kubernetes project has policies around this that I get to help write, which is cool and fun. But LLMs can't help fix this because LLMs can't. There's like the very simple answer for why an LLM can't solve this is LLMs cannot sign a CLA. They can't. They can't sign a CLA. So an LLM cannot be a contributor or a maintainer to a project. It isn't a legal entity. It isn't a legal person. I don't think it should ever be a legal entity or a legal person. It can't sign a license agreement, so it can't be a maintainer. Now, can people, like individuals who have with their own GitHub accounts signed a CLA and taken personal responsibility, use something like Copilot or Tab9 or whatever to help them make contributions? Totally. We don't have a rule against it. We also don't like specifically endorse it. I don't like it personally, but we don't have a rule about it, and we're not going to have a rule against it because people are going to do it no matter what. But when you have signed a CLA as your real person and you are using Copilot or whatever to write your code for you, if you don't understand that code, and there's something bad in it and we don't catch it, you're still liable for it. So it would behoove you, if you are using stuff like Copilot to contribute to open source, to still understand what you're submitting. If you do understand it and you're able to make it through a PR review, you can answer questions about it. It does seem like helpful. It solves a problem. It closes an issue. We don't care. Go for it. The standard rules we have for there's a section in the contributor guide for large or automated edits. The standard applies there, even for AI stuff, which means do not give me a 15,000 line PR to review. I don't care what it is. I don't care how useful it is. I don't care if you're solving simultaneously every problem this project has. If that thing is 15,000 lines long, we're closing it. No.
Yeah, ain't nobody reading that.
Ain't nobody reading that. We don't have the time. We don't have the people to review that. It's not going to happen. So if you're going to use an LLM to help you contribute, fine. Keep it bite-sized. Same rules as writing it by hand apply. Have fun, but understand what you're writing.
I don't understand the problem. Why don't you just have an LLM review the code? I mean, come on, Kat.
You know what? That did come up when the steering committee was arguing about how to write this policy like 2 weeks ago, and the answer is because we require a human in the loop.
Yeah. Apache Software Foundation right now is thinking about if software is generated by an LLM, can that be copyrighted? So that falls into this as well.
Yeah, there's a huge issue with software licensing, with copyright ownership. We saw a lot of this argument, 3 years ago when Copilot first came out and when they first started charging for it, because it was trained on open source code. It was trained on things that were licensed everywhere from like MIT to AGPL. So is that a license violation? Is that a violation of AGPL? It could be. There were court cases over it. I don't remember how any of them shook out though. But Yeah, like software licensing is always going to be an argument when an LLM gets involved. Who owns that?
Yeah, and as you were pointing out too, it's not just simple as, oh, we'll hand wave and let the lawyers argue this part. Every part about this, what is this PR? Do you know what's going on? That's a conversation that is part of collaboration that just has to be necessary of any project, whether we're talking about open source or just internal in business. You're having that conversation. What did you mean to do here? Why did you make this decision?
Yeah.
Is this a good decision, et cetera? And part of that too, I think, ties into, I want to pull in what you were talking about, telling us a bit early about the different SIGs. Some of them seem to be popular. I think that, SIG docs, networking, I think you've mentioned before, they get really popular. So there's also this, I guess maybe strange, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but this strange dynamic of this poor Ingress Engine X doesn't have support, but these others do. Tell us a little bit more about the human condition that you think is driving some of these.
Yeah, so a thing that I think we tend to forget as Kubernetes maintainers who have been around a while is that we are large, and for a lot of people, we are a source of clout. People want to put Kubernetes contributor or maintainer. We make it a little bit harder to become a maintainer, but people want to put that on their resume. Especially people who are like fresh out of college or really early in their career, they want the flash of that, and we can't blame them for that. Like that's valid and understandable, and we're happy to give it to you if you're willing and able to contribute to earn it. But some parts of the project definitely have a much easier time with getting contributors because they're more public. So SIG release is probably the flashiest part of the project because of that. The Kubernetes release team is made up of 20 to 25 people. We have 3 release cycles a year, and it is the only part of the project where it's just an open application. Being on the release team automatically gets you org membership, so you get to say that you're a Kubernetes contributor. You get a little badge on your GitHub profile and everything. And 3 times a year, we open up a public application to come be on the Kubernetes release team. And it's very competitive. We get 200 or 300 applicants for 20, 25 spots. And a lot of them are from people who are very, very early in their careers, or they're still students in a lot of cases. So it's a great onboarding ramp for the rest of the project. But a lot of people do the release team one cycle, get it on their resume, and then dip, and they don't contribute elsewhere. So we do have to like actively work to move people from contributing in SIG release to contributing in, say, SIG docs, which is less flashy and basically always hurting for contributors. Or try to move them. We can't really move them over to Ingress Engine X because it requires too much like very specialized knowledge and a like really solid understanding of the Kubernetes code base. But we do use the release team as on-ramps for less flashy parts of the project that are more often really hurting for support because they don't have the like public clout aspect. Like merging a PR in SIG node doesn't give you anything that you can put on your LinkedIn profile. Whereas if you're on like the Kubernetes release team, you get to put on your LinkedIn profile that you were a freelancer in the Kubernetes project and you were, a release signal shadow or an enhancement shadow for Kubernetes version 1.35. And that is, it's a thing that looks good on resumes for people who are early in career. Lots of projects suffer from that, like that are just as important, that are the XKCD comic, right? Like it's this one tiny little thing that's the underpinning of a ton of digital infrastructure, but you get no clout from contributing to XZ utils. It doesn't look good on a resume, so there's less motivation for people that have the time to do it, which is unfortunate. But it is reality. People got to pay their bills.
People got to pay the bills. They need the incentives, and there are still the tangible benefits to what these these under supported SIGs do, even with docs. Because let me just ask the question this way: what are some skills that people can bring to the table? Does everybody just need to know Go, and that's that's it, and they can contribute to Kubernetes? What are the skills you're looking for?
But it depends on what you want to do. If you want to write code contributions to Kubernetes, then yes, you need to know Go. But what's really valuable in basically any open source project is project management skills. Project management skills, super helpful. Technical writing skills, super helpful. Experience working like asynchronously with a globally distributed team, super helpful, like in the context of project management or engineering. Either way, that's helpful. But all open source maintainers are PMs. That is what we are. Contributors, not necessarily. Contributors can just be engineers or just be technical writers, but maintainers are all PMs functionally. Even if our day job is engineering, the job we are doing for the project is some kind of project management. That's what it is. And a lot of older maintainers, and I say older meaning not in age, but having been around in a project for a long time, don't like hearing that because they want to feel like they're still engineers. But baby, we are PMs. Like we are upper management. That is what that's what being a maintainer is. Because most of our day-to-day stuff is dealing with people problems or like time management or making sure that all of these tiny little things happen in the right order so that we can get this thing out the door, and knowing who to talk to when something goes wrong. So if you are good at those things, functionally every open source project on Earth needs you for something. You don't have to be an engineer. You really don't.
And those are skills that are going to apply to any company internally as well, open source or closed source. There's an aspect there too of, especially as you're describing what PMs do, how they're thinking. I want to come back to the documentation, because documentation can be very influential to security. For example, here are the defaults you should use, or here's the example to copy. Here's how to implement this that everybody's going to do, and nobody's going to change anything.
Yeah.
They're not going to think for themselves. Sorry, people. So thinking of Ingress Nginx as the example, or others, how do you approach just specifically from the docs to say, we want to help people as much as possible. We think they'll RTFM. Even if they don't, there's got to be some influence there. So how do you approach that to make this a successful part of the possible as the code is as well?
So first of all, the Kubernetes project doesn't allow any enhancements or user-facing changes, anything that like a user or a cluster admin can touch into the project undocumented. It is a hard requirement. We have a phase for it in the release cycle called docs freeze. If you do not have documentation, if we determine that your feature needs docs and you do not give us docs by that time, we will either pull your enhancement from the release or we will block the release until you have that documentation. I'm a big fan of the block the release threat because it's less work for us. And it also makes it like very obvious that we're not messing around here, and you do in fact have to do this. And if you do not, it is causing problems for everybody else. But yeah, we hard require docs. On another note, we also we try not to be too opinionated. Like we try not to be kingmakers, which is a CNCF policy as well. It's why you see so many CNCF projects that do like kind of the same thing. They just approach it in a different way. We don't tend to come from on high if there are multiple ways to do a thing and say, this is the way you're going to do it. This is the tool you're going to use. So the fact that our documentation so heavily relies on saying, use Ingress Nginx is not because we love Ingress Nginx more than Gateway API. It is because Ingress Nginx is what we've had for so long. Like there just wasn't an alternative. It was the way to do it. So that's what we documented. We saw this same thing with the Docker shim deprecation kerfuffle. It's not that using the entire Docker tech stack as your container runtime was inherently better than using Containerd or Cryo or whatever. It's that for a long time, Docker was the only runtime for Kubernetes. So that's why that turned into so much trouble. people who had been running their clusters for a really long time using Docker came from a time where there was no choice. So same deal with Ingress Nginx. For a long time, there was no choice, and now there is. And unfortunately, Ingress Nginx has to die, and now we have to update all of our documentation, which is quite an undertaking. But if you're listening to this and you're a Kubernetes expert and you feel really good about your experience with both Ingress Nginx and Gateway API, come talk to us in the SIG Docs channel in the Kubernetes Slack workspace, and I will put you to work.
And that's a great follow-up question there is, how does somebody fluff up their resume? No, this is not what we want them to do. Somebody who wants to contribute and be a meaningful part of any of the SIGs, do they just jump in that Slack channel and say, hey, I'm here to help?
Yeah, so you can absolutely just jump into the Slack channel and say, hey, I'm here to help. My number one recommendation is to come to our meetings. Every SIG has regularly scheduled public meetings. There will be an agenda document with usually a spot for newcomers to introduce themselves. And yeah, you show up to that meeting and say, I would like to help. What is available for me to help with? There will be like sub-project updates. So if somebody is talking about like an issue that they're working on in a sub-project and it piques your interest, you just speak up and say, I would like to work with you on this. That's a great way to do it. You can come to any of our meetings for any SIG and just sit there and listen and like get the lay of the land if you like. We also don't care if you're contributing just to fluff up your resume. Like, that's fine. The end result is the same for us. You're helping us with something. I don't really care what your motivations are for doing it. So, yeah, if you want to come hustle and grind on PRs for months to become a Kubernetes contributor and get org membership, and then dip once you have the org membership, okay, that's fine. If you do want to stick around and eventually become a part of project leadership, become a maintainer by getting like a technical lead or a SIG chair role, or unseating me in the steering committee, I'm happy to help you do that too. That takes a little bit longer, and it requires a little bit more of the like social aspect of the project, a little bit more talking to other people and other SIGs. So it takes a while to get comfortable with doing that, but more than happy to help you do that too. You can even just come to the Slack workspace and just DM me. I'll answer you probably. So
yeah, it sounds like time is the currency in open source.
Yeah,
are you contributing time in a helpful way? It doesn't matter that motivation necessarily. That don't take away time from other people with that 15,000 line PR. That's, I guess, the other takeaway.
Yeah, don't do that. We have had a couple, and they took years to merge, and they finally merged like, I don't know, 5 or 6 releases ago, and never again. No, never again.
Never again. So. Yeah. Since we are coming down to the end of the year, looking forward to 2026, March or so is going to be a little bit rough for Ingress Nginx. Pour one out for that poor software.
Rip.
What else do you have in mind, or what else would you like to see for Kubernetes in 2026, or perhaps a year or two beyond there?
Ooh, so we're obviously very large still, but there are areas of the project that get significantly less help than I would like to see. I would like to see more contributors to the SIGDocs blog subproject. Is it flashy? No. Is it an extremely easy and low effort and low commitment way to start contributing to open source, even if you're not technical? Yes. It is so easy. Same with the localization subprojects. If you speak fluently a language other than English, pretty much, there is definitely very useful, very impactful, very public work you can do in the Kubernetes project. I think the only localization subproject that is super well staffed is Chinese, maybe Hindi as well. But basically every other language is hurting for help, and we don't use LLMs to translate our docs for us. It's all human translated because some of the nuance gets lost if you try doing it all with an LLM. But that is a place that's easy to help. So I would love to see more of that in 2026. Organizationally for the project, I think we're in a pretty good spot, actually. The way we govern ourselves has proven to be pretty effective. There's always like small incremental improvements we can make. I would like to see a more clear contributor ladder across the project. So a documented way for somebody new to come in, what they need to do to be eligible for leadership roles in whatever SIG. I would like to see that be a little bit more well defined. But that's a longer haul project. That's not something we can fix quickly, unfortunately.
No, but clearly opportunities for people with different skills, whether they want to do that
Yeah.
communications, that the programming, or anything in between, or the PM as well.
Yeah.
Kat, one thing that we always ask near the end of our interviews for our guests is
Mhm.
to describe AppSec in 3 words. And I'm curious how you would approach this, knowing that Kubernetes can be reduced down to 3 letters. We figured this might be easier for you to reduce down to 3 words.
I'm going to say a constant struggle. I don't think that application security is ever going to be a solved problem. It's always something that we're going to have to fight for. I consider it an invitation when somebody argues that like their platform or their tool is 100% secure. No, it is not.
No.
It is not. That is an invitation. You are asking somebody to try. And I think it's better to admit that application security is something that we're always going to struggle with. We're always going to have to work towards. And that means admitting that there is always going to be a hacker that is smarter or more resourceful than you. That just is the way it is. Don't delude yourself. Don't lie to your users. That's the dangerous one. But it is always going to be a constant struggle. And I do not believe that any vendor, product, or platform or project is ever going to like truly solve it. There's going to be some novel something at some point. Always.
It's hard to top that statement. I think we just let that stand because it speaks quite a bit of truth. I want to say thank you once again, Kat, for joining us. This was a fun conversation, good behind the scenes of what it takes to participate and maintain really complex projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank John as well. Thank everyone for joining us. We're going to take a quick break now and return with news of the week.
Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots. Just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock.
Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. We just talked with Kat Cosgrove about Kubernetes, Ingress Nginx. The poor thing is going to go away. What that tells us about managing large projects, managing documentation, and just managing people, which is what a lot of open source involves. It's not just a little bit of code here and there. It's how people use it. And I think that's a good thing. The other good thing is that I'm here with John Kinsella for our last news segment of the year, John. 2025 is going away. Yep.
It went by with a bang. I have to go back and comment, like, for all those people who think the managers are useless, thank you. You know, we actually do something and provide value. So thank you for that.
And speaking of past shows, there was, I think, a good segment 2 shows ago, I have to dig it out, where you were describing a little bit of management skills, a little bit of working with people. And these are the types of things that come up organically, and just wanted to shout that out and appreciate it, because I also make you suffer through a lot of news articles. Um, I think some of them, let's see which of them that you suffered through, which of you that you enjoyed. Way back, one of our first articles, January 6th, episode 312, was finding critical flaws in secure systems. So this is a blog post of Trail of Bits. Admittedly, I didn't do the count, but we've had at least a dozen or so, I think, articles from Trail of Bits throughout 2025. One of the reasons I had grabbed this article I wanted to look back to, and it's just one of the points it makes is avoid using recursion altogether. Rewrite recursive functions as iterative functions. Now, this is not one of those things that this isn't always do this, but it was an article talking about writing secure code. And it wasn't about input validation. It wasn't about do this OWASP top 10 thing. It was, here is a very explicit example of handling parsing, handling recursion with examples of what work. And I think that's the type of article we like to highlight here. I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, I'm just sort of, scanning back through that and refreshing my mind. I think our listeners are going to see a trend here of where the ones which we brought back, to be honest, we're not just going, oh, wow, hey, look at this cool vulnerability. It's more about how do you write software? How do you think about software and architecture to be able to make sure the system is secure? And yeah, sort of as I scan through this, I start thinking, when I've done recursion in the past, was, when I went and said and had that moment where you go like, oh, this I could use recursion here. Was it, do I need to use recursion here? I should use recursion here, or oh, this is a chance to use recursion. And it's too late now. I couldn't tell you what the thought was at the time, but at least I'm thinking of that. I'm like, yeah, it's when do you really need to recurse through something like this versus just have a for loop or something else? And yeah, it's a good thing to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's think about how do you code defensively. And speaking of, we're not just looking for the coolest vulnerabilities. Here's my next article, John. The top 10 coolest vulnerabilities in 2024.
I was trying to go the right way.
I know, you set me up in the worst way possible. I love it. But no, this is an annual list from Portswigger Research, and we'll be looking forward to what they've put together for 2025. It's a community effort that people can nominate. What was interesting on this list that there were 2 OAuth related vulnerabilities, and OAuth was actually a theme throughout 2025 for a lot of our conversations. There was, and I have to do a long sigh here, there was one related to ChatGPT, but it was really just a path traversal problem that was found in the ChatGPT website and how it was handling caching. It had nothing to do with prompt injection, jailbreaking, etc. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was nice to see, let's call it, web hacking, old school web hacking, and complexities of OAuth. I wonder what 2025 is going to be like in the sense of this is a prompt injection, another prompt injection, another prompt injection. I'm really hoping AppSec just doesn't become, here are fancy ways to put a bunch of sentences together to trick an LLM, because that feels too much of like, this is a cool way I can do cross-site scripting. Here's another cool way I can do cross-site scripting. Yet another cool way I can do cross-site scripting, and so on. So that's my little bit of wish for next year.
Excuse me. And yeah, when I made that joke about a list of vulns, I thought of this article too. But what's interesting is this isn't a list of vulns, right? This is techniques, and it's a pretty heady list, man. My takeaway from this was, as I went through this, was if you think about, as a lot of our systems are getting better out there, the researchers are having to find more and more interesting ways to actually do some of these things. And actually, how do you gain that foothold or that toehold into a system? My favorite was number 1, but just scroll through them really quickly. Hijacking OAuth flows using cookie tossing. You mentioned a GPT one. OAuth non-happy path to ATO. Arbitrary JavaScript execution of PDF.js. That was a fun one. double click checking. I mean, none of these are simple, like, just roll out of bed and find a vulnerability. But the number one, confusion attacks, exploiting hidden semantic ambiguity in the Apache HTTPD server. Excuse me, Apache HTTP server. It is HTTPD. And just like they've got a few quotes from some folks that like reviewed it, and like those alone made me want to go through and click on the actual research itself and start digging through it. And I mean, you could be here for quite a while probably if you read through all the stories that they're linking to at Portswigger. So yeah, it's not just hey, we figured out if we move these characters around, we can do the same SQL injection in a different style. It's a really good list of techniques, I think.
It is. And when we talked with James Kettle about this list, one of the things he was emphasizing was how much these techniques build on prior work. It's very much it's not like one person was really, really smart and figured this out on their own. They looked at prior lists. They looked at what are the presentations people are giving. And one of the other things was there was a lot of learning just in here's some, as James also mentioned, here's some techniques I tried and I failed. But we learned along the way of just how to be better at our tools, customize our tools, our hacking tools, for example. So there's a lot of meat to techniques to research. So yeah, that's absolutely something we're going to come back to. There is now here I'm going to bookend. Back in March we talked about the open source project security baseline. And at the end of November, we talked about the OWASP top 10. Now, the top 10, not a baseline. And I appreciate it also says, even within the doc itself, it's not a standard. Don't try to base your AppSec program on this. But it's still AppSec love lists. And it's weird, just OSPS has 8 months later now, it still has a couple extra controls on it. I don't know if this will be the thing that people are going to start referencing a lot, like they are referencing the OWASP top 10, but it was one of that category of what you used to like to say a lot, John. Let's check this out 6 months later. The open source project security baseline was something I checked out 6 months later, and it had some effort, it had some collaboration, but it doesn't seem to be in the zeitgeist, so to speak, at least not yet.
I love the idea. Excuse me. I'm sort of wondering if this was written by security people or developers. And the reason I say that, like I started sort of scrolling through controls overview, level 1, the very first rule they've got in here, OSPS-AC-01.01. When a user attempts to read or modify a sensitive resource in a project's authoritative repository, the system must request that the user complete a multi-factor authentication process. I like it all as security nerds like that and want to see that everywhere, but is that what you're going to lead out of the gate with? I don't know. So, I mean, if I was a developer and like I saw this, I'm like, shit, I'm at the first one. Like I haven't, I got to go do that. And this is like, I didn't see how many are in here. There's a pretty good number of rules. I guess that's what, like probably about 20, 25 rules probably. And that's just level 1 of 2. So, there's 3, excuse me. I love the idea. I'd love to see this, adopted far and wide. But the one thing I've seen doing open source for open source security, doing security for an open source security project, good thing I wasn't talking for them, was it's hard to get folks, right? We're talking with Kat and she's like, how do you get contributors in? How do you get them doing things? They don't have to be doing code. But once you've got those software developers doing software development, coming along in and going, hi, I'm from security, I'm here to help. it's an upward struggle. So I think these guys are going to find that they're going to have to lead with a carrot, not with a big stick.
Yeah. The one thing one of the reasons I did highlight this, I do appreciate that it does seem very risk focused. These seem like meaningful items. These aren't items. And I think that's a good thing. We just, as you were pointing out, have to figure out how to translate that into developer or honestly just into human friendly items. Speaking of translating for humans, here's I'm going to jump to, do not write that jailbreak paper. This is from Javier Rando on an AI safety and security blog. And the reason I pulled this in was, if you notice on my list, I'm jumping ahead a little bit or I guess foreshadowing. I did not include anything that was like, oh, here's a cool jailbreak, here's a cool prompt injection, etc. And part of that is the reasoning that went into this paper. And I'll quote from it. We should think of jailbreaks as an evaluation tool for security features in LLMs. And another nice quote that was impactful contributions come from fundamentally new ways of exploiting these vulns. It's not just like, here's another way to use a pop-up, or how to grab a cookie from cross-site scripting. And this is where I'm really hoping that what I'm going curious to see what the top 10 web hacking techniques for 2025 will be, and if they are related to anything LLMs. Because yes, that's what everybody loves to see, what everybody loves to play with, but it seems like the new shiny toy that's not of consequence yet, which we'll see. We'll see what the end of 2026 makes that statement sound like.
I have asked a few of our guests over the last probably 3-4 months questions around whatever they've been working on versus the speed of Gen AI. And to bring it back to this one in the opposite direction, that stuff is moving so quickly. It has moved so quickly that thinking about security it was hindsight, right? Which is why jailbreaks were being dropped left and right. Still are going to go on for a while, but yeah, it's how often when I see a jailbreak article, do I actually go and read it or go, I'm like, oh, another one. Cool. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not going to get that thought right. There was some stuff which came out from reInvent, I believe, on Garmin's keynote. No, it might have been on one of the others. I'm just starting to go through the keynotes for the event. But one of the things AWS is apparently coming out with is the ability to have a second agent check the work after the first agent gets something done. So it's where I'm going with this is like there's got to be some capabilities of like that people are building. Like how do you improve the security, make it less chance of a jailbreak if someone does do a jailbreak and you catch it? So I think some of those type of things are actively being worked on by a bunch of different places. So 2026 will be interesting.
It will be, and there will be. I did have their OWASP. They were pretty busy this year. They turned their LLM top 10 into the Gen AI security project. They also have the OWASP AI testing guide. So for all of you people out there building MCPs, speaking of, I'll say easy mode about a lot of the security that happens to have come in together about what was forgotten or what was left out of the MCP spec in the sense of authentication or sandboxing or handling data. So there'll be some good things to stay up to date there on. But let me move away from LLMs for a moment and go back to another fun article. March was apparently a lot of my favorite articles. There was from the Go programming language, there was one about traversal resistant file APIs. And of course, I have not talked enough about path traversals this year. It's one of my favorite folds ever. But the reason I like this was here is the programming language introducing primitives, components in the language that just make it much harder to introduce this type of flaw. Now, even in this article, file systems vary a bit depending on what operating system you are, if you're an environment within like NPMs and whatnot. But these are good things. What was just interesting to me, this was an article in 2025, and Go just celebrated what decade of its first decade plus of being a language, and now it's getting around to some of the security items. Now, I say that a little bit offhand. It's had a lot of good security from the beginning, but it's just interesting what it takes and the time it takes to bring application security, if you will, into programming languages. So yay for Go.
Yep, 18 years it's been around.
18, there we go, almost 2 decades. What's been around even longer than Go has been curl. And curl also famously is written in C. And as we talked with Daniel Stenberg, will always be written in C. Now, I did admittedly a bit of a fanboy this year. We talked with Daniel and I grabbed several of his blogs. And a lot of them, I think, were well written and good for AppSec people to listen to because they were a combination of here's the LLM slop we're getting through bug bounty reports. Here are the types of vulnerabilities that we think like that AI can possibly find, or that the AI cyber challenge from DEF CON this year was looking for, that were artificially introduced into a project like curl, as well as the conjecture, could a human or could our existing tools already find those types of vulns efficiently? And just in the sense of, yeah, sure, curl's written in C, but they have a lot of practices behind it. They have a lot of social contracts within as contributors with what you're contributing in order to make that very creaky, unsafe, and potentially unsafe language relatively safe as they used it to implement their project. So it's a bit of it's a great way to show how you can curate and maintain an open source project with strong security properties as well. So yay for curl. That's what I wanted to get in there.
There was a blog post in the last month. I don't see a date on it. 12/7. Wow, hot damn! Just last week. With the title of "If you're going to vibe code, why not do it in C?" It's by Stephen Ramsey. That crossed my radar. And so the Stenberg articles had me thinking about this a little bit. And the point in the blog post I'm talking about is basically, if you've got a machine talking to a machine, and I think there's a flawed argument, but their argument is if you've got an LLM that's just coding stuff for a computer to compile, why would you write in a high level language that's been written for humans, like C or Rust or Pascal? Pick any of them, right? And the argument obviously is like you need to have a large corpus to be able to pull from to train the LLM. And he starts talking about in the future, are we going to have like languages which have been designed to be used for vibe coding, or where's it going to go? And it's a fun, cute article, but like I'm not going to take it too seriously. But yeah, I think one of the patterns we're going to keep seeing is some projects could be very anti accepting code from an LLM. And others are going to be, oh no, just bring it in and come in and take it, and we'll just add it into the robots. We'll take care of everything. I think those are going to be two distinct houses, and I suspect the first one is going to become smaller and smaller. But I don't think that's going to be solved in 2026, probably 2027, 28. But that's when we'll fully take care of application security.
Then we'll just have to close down the podcast and go into something new. Can't we talk about horror movies or something actually interesting? Speaking of horror-related things, we did not see a lot of WebAssembly, or I was looking for a lot of just articles on WebAssembly, and what I was doing it from the perspective of, I like it as a great sandboxing, a great way to have more security just out of the box by default. WebAssembly has a lot of good properties. It does seem to be used in a lot of specific areas of infrastructure if you're building platforms, but it's not like I'll say a web app programming language in the sense of these are the app consumer facing or maybe even B2B type of apps. We haven't seen that a lot, but if you want MCPs to be sandboxed, it seems like WebAssembly would have been a great choice there.
Yeah. I looked around as well. The New Stack did an article on the 10-year anniversary and sort of talked through some of the things coming in WASM 3, like new string types and things like that. It is sort of interesting. I sort of wonder, as we get more languages out there to choose from, is it going to be harder to pick? Like, is it going to be harder for one to break through and sort of become like that next big thing? Yeah, there's a few internal uses I could think of for WASM, but it's too late. The language has been picked. But like, yeah, it's. Do we need to get people when we're thinking about a new project? When do you think about, or how do you get people to think about? Oh, maybe you should try using X instead of Y. I don't know. I think we both think highly of it, but it's in its space. I think a lot of people are playing with it, compiling to WASM or compiling from WASM, but still, where do you really, how do you get traction for a project like this?
Yeah, I think perhaps speaking out loud, the lesson for me is more of, rather than wishing people would just do things more securely, we have to go figure out what people are doing and influence the security in their day-to-day efforts. It doesn't, and even predicating this, it wasn't the idea that we'll replace all the languages with one other language, with C versus Go. That's not the conversation here. It's more of how are you developing it, what are properties you're getting out of that. And I think a couple other things to wrap up here, just some themes that I was looking for. I mentioned we saw a lot of OAuth references. If you want to do some hacking in 2026, go punch it on some OAuth endpoints. Because the specs are a bit crazy. They takes 20 pages of, I think it is, of the best guidance on security for OAuth 2.1 or 2.0. 2.1 is coming. And then the other thing is there's a lot of conversations about challenges within open source communities, everything from Open grep for SemGrep. That's very much in the security community. Ruby gems and just package maintainers and package platforms pushing things like MFA onto maintainers and how that was accepted, and even just conversations we had, I guess, last year with Zap, and just now with Cat about Ingress Engine X. So open source needs support. It needs security support as well as documentation, collaboration, that project management, a lot of skills that you can bring. So if you are a listener out there just coming out of college, wanting to build your skills, open source can be a great way to do it. And a lot of these projects do have some degree of mentorship as well. They're not just going to throw you in the deep end of code and say, go solve this and come back to us when you're done.
Yeah, it's in when I never got really active into Kubernetes projects. I wasn't CNCF, I wasn't ASF. I very seldom would run into folks doing the resume building thing that Kat mentioned. So I'm sure some folks out there doing it, but most people are there because they love it or they want to really contribute and learn. Don't go out to like a small 1 or 2 person project and say, hey, I'd love to help do security here, because they just don't have the time. But anything that's coming out of CNCF or Kubernetes, it's sort of the same. But like any of these large orgs or ASF, there's definitely a path that people have spent a lot of time thinking about. How do we train and educate and get people to come up to speed and get them to help us? So don't hesitate, man. Like you've got a free day over the Christmas holidays or the winter holidays. Just go find something you've been interested in, and go find their Discord server or chat server and just say hi. They'll find a use for you.
There you go. That's if we want to summarize what our year in 3 words, just say hi. We could do it that way. Well, John, any parting notes, any final thoughts you'd like to wrap up the year with for our listeners?
Not really. I didn't come up with 3 words for this year. I think we've had some really great ones over the year, so I don't think it's possible to top some of those. No, I think as I was saying earlier, I think the next 2 or 3 years are going to be really pivotal. If someone's in their career and they're trying to figure out where do they go next, what are they doing, you better at least be thinking about the Gen AI stuff. Not so much you have to go and make that your job and work in it day in, day out, but how is all the stuff that there's a lot of people working on, how's that going to affect your job and where your career is in the future, next few years? That's sort of where I'd leave things at.
We'll hit the ground running in January on that very topic. Thank you, John.
Pleasure as always. Thank you, Mike.
I'll give a shout out to Kalyani as well. Hope to see a lot more of her in 2026. And of course, thanks to everyone for joining us. Please do remember to subscribe, check out the show notes, and share about us on the socials. And speaking of forgetting things as we come to the end of the year, don't forget about us, but do listen to Erase Me by Megan McDuffie. That's my Synthwave shout out and the final one for this year. So hopefully all of you have put together a good playlist. Now, we're going to have 2 more episodes this month with recorded interviews from the OWASP 2025 Global AppSec Summit. And after that, we'll see you next year on Application Security Weekly.